Had a compliment here and there, and one time I was making out with this Chinese guy whose English I thought was pretty great. But he breaks off in the middle of kissing and just says, "You're so hearty, heartier than a peach," and goes right back to making out again. Hey, I'll take it, whatever the F he meant.
Well, I don't know what that means.
Sex with a Mexican girl I met in Berlin. She was staying in the same hotel as me and we hit it off. On the night, we'd both had quite a few drinks and she was very much the instigator of the intercourse. I woke up and had bite marks and scratches on my body. She woke up and said, "I have to go to church right now. Thank you for the orgasm. Please leave." We both got dressed in silence and I went back to my room. I saw her later that day and she ignored me. Then later that night, there was a knock on my door. She used me twice and bailed on me to go to church both times. This is just cute. A Russian girl said she liked my bumps.
Who really got
me at the
used?
time, so I realized she meant bum. I had to explain to her the difference between a butt or bum and a bump. She still called her backside her bumps though. When I told her it was singular, she pointed out that she has 2 boobs and 2 pumps. Can't argue with that. The first time I had sex with a Japanese lady, I woke up with my underwear and the rest of my clothes neatly folded at the foot of my bed rather than stone and abandoned across the floor as I had left them. Apparently she woke up in the middle of the night and felt she needed to do that. And I thank her for that. I'm sure this is a common one, but the first time I had sex with a Korean man, he told me to kiss his dragon. I nearly burst out laughing. So I was in the Philippines and I was staying with my cousins. I'm half Pinoy, grew up in the US, in this little village. I met this pretty girl a few houses down and we started talking. Nothing happened. The next day, a local friend and I went to the club, or what the Pinoy call the disco, about 15 minutes away. I met this girl there again. Again, we started talking, and when we were all partied out and drunk, we shared a taxi back to the village. She invited me to her place, we played Jenga, and had a little sex. Now here's the weird part. A couple of weeks later, I found out that she was my cousin. Turns out my grandpa got around with half the village in his day. Lost my virginity to my cousin. A Chinese woman ran her fingers through my white guy chest hair and asked if Western women had hairy chests too. Did you tell her that you don't often see many white women? And in fact, they're so alike in voice and appearance that they're often mistaken for white men. White people are like dwarves. We pop out from the ground. Had a one-night stand with a Japanese girl I met at a bar. We went back to her place and we were pretty loud. Great sex, but I go downstairs to leave in the morning and her whole family is there having breakfast. Turns out she lived with her parents and siblings. It was so awkward. I couldn't speak Japanese, so I just slipped past them out the door. Was this in Japan? Yeah, I used to live in Sasebo, Japan. I briefly dated a woman from Honduras who would transition from English to Spanish, CCC as she reached orgasm, which wouldn't be notable except that when she wasn't having sex, she frequently talked about how much she hated the Spanish language and had no use for it. Well, you have one use for it.
That is odd.
In Australia, I hooked up with a German chick. She panted, put it in my ass. Those were the last English words I heard her say. Everything after was German. She was gone when I woke up. A Japanese girl wouldn't allow me to go down on her because she thought it was a dirty act. She then proceeded to go down on me and even licked my asshole of her own accord. It was pretty hairy back there, by the way, so don't really understand the logic there. Edit. Info update. We had sex, so I did see her flower, and it was absolutely fine. No excessive flesh, as many have speculated. Also, no bad smells or crazy bush. She wasn't playing coy for cultural reasons, as suggested. She was adamant that she hated it. Maybe she'd had bad experiences in the past. Too bad for her. I would have put in a good stint. I in no way think this is a cultural thing, but I had oral sex with an Indian girl that slept overnight with her, and she ended up giving me like 6 hand jobs while she was still sleeping. I'd wake up with her jerking me off, nuzzling her face into my beard, and trying to put her face into mine. It was magical. Almost died at work the next morning. Kinda sad really, but I was working in Senegal and hooked up with a girl I worked with. Clothes started coming off and in broken English she goes, "Do you have something?" I thought she meant a condom, so I was like, "Yeah, I do." She pushes me away, she says she has to go, gets dressed, and leaves. Seriously took me months to realize she probably meant, "Do you have any
STDs?"
Such a shame. We both wanted safe sex, but it got lost in translation and me being an idiot. Banged this Romanian chick while I was stationed in California. She told me I was such a gentleman for not coming on her face. I'm guessing Romanian men haven't set the bar that high for her. I don't know what to make of that. I am Indo-Canadian. I hooked up with a Franco-Ontarian, bilingual French-Canadian for a few weeks once. He was the nicest guy ever with the cutest accent and beard. He asked me if I wanted him to talk dirty to me in French and I said yes. Slowly I started talking mushy to him in Hindi. Most intense sex ever. He made me French toast with maple syrup too in the mornings. My Venezuelan ex would say, "Papi, I feel you so good," right before she would come. Oh, I'm late to the party. I was in the Philippines, asked a girl out on a date. She agreed and we ended up having having sex. I wake up the next morning, she's getting dressed and says I owe her money for the sex. I told her hell no, and she pulls a knife. And then I realized I do owe her money. I was freaked out and just gave her everything I had. The scary part was, after I gave her everything, she didn't move from in front of the door, so I grabbed her purse on the bed and threw it out the window. When she ran to the window, I ran like Forrest Gump. First time with a Chinese girlfriend, she would basically replace the word orgasm with a dying. I'm dying. You make me die.
Dying. You're making me die.
Women for a while. She didn't let me eat her out because she thought that was a shameful thing for a man to do. She said only a weak man submitted and would never do that. Not sure if this was a cultural thing or just her own personal opinion. I hooked up with a beautiful Brazilian girl when she was visiting our country. She was there to learn English, so her English was fairly poor. Our date consisted of funny, awkward moments and lots of Google Translate. Anyway, so with me living with my parents at the time, I thought it'd be nice to bring her to the mountains to see the city view at night. It was dark and quiet with no one around, so we got down to business. With me trying to be a generous guy, I went to go down on her, but she stopped me. Maybe twice. I didn't think too much of it, and we made love under the moonlight. During all this, I was pleasantly surprised how wet she felt. Once we were done, I offered to go down again. Wasn't sure if she had finished, and she said no and tried explaining something in Portuguese. I gave her my phone for the translate, and she said, I'm unwell. She didn't seem unwell, so I had to look up what she wrote, and it was something like menstruada. And that's a complete guess. Point the phone down and see blood everywhere. Definitely worth the cleanup the next morning, but I found it crazy that it didn't seem like an issue whatsoever when it came to sex. She didn't seem embarrassed at all or fazed at not discussing it beforehand. I have no clue if it was a cultural thing or personal. Can't wait for her next visit. I'm Brazilian as well. From my experience, some girls simply don't mind having sex on their period, others do. This ranges from them basically ignoring it to feeling a bit shy to being super uncomfortable with it. An American friend of mine was a student in Japan and got a Japanese girlfriend. The first time they had sex, she whimpered and cowered and kept telling him to stop and that it hurt, so he stopped, of course, and apologized for hurting her. She looked at him quizzically and was like, why'd you stop? Apparently, it's normal for women in Japan to pretend like the man is hurting or forcing her. It's considered complimentary, similar to telling a guy he's got a big dick or something. Pretty creepy. First off, she was curious about my penis because it didn't look right. I was a 20-year-old American at the time who had just gotten naked in front of a Czech coworker who wanted to pay me back for teaching her class for a week. She gets naked, I tell her she looks gorgeous, I get naked, she immediately wonders aloud on why my penis looks like a hose. I figured it out later when I realized that she had only seen uncut dongs before, and I was the first cut dong she had ever seen. Either that or my shit's all fucked up, who knows. So several minutes after she says that my genitalia is odd looking, we start getting at it. I spend a good 20 minutes sniffing the roses at Busch Gardens, and she's putty. She tells me she wants my straight cock inside of her. Of course, before I can do so, she says I want roses. Okay, what's the bunny? She gets on all fours, presents her ass to me by waving it in my face. She says, this is the bunny. I shake my head. I correct her. No, that's doggy style. She shakes her head, barely visible behind her giant ass, and replies, no, this is the bunny. Settle up behind her, ready my cock, and say, I'm pretty sure this is called doggy style. Turns out you can have an argument about the proper name of a sex position while also having sex in said sex position, which on one hand is great because I lasted forever and I came like a hydrant. On the other hand, she got pregnant and ended up with some guy, and now she has a few kids, so I guess she won that one. The bunny, it is. On the other hand, she got pregnant and ended up with some guy, and now she has a few kids. To clarify, is one of them yours? The timing's about right, but 6 years later, still doesn't look like me, and she's never claimed otherwise. So in my mind, I go with, nah, not mine. I'm a Scottish guy, and I had a thing with a Malaysian girl who was studying at my university for a year. After she had given me a blowjob for the first time, I started moving towards eating her out. She was completely confused at this point and didn't understand what I was doing. When I explained I was returning the favor, she flat out told me it was impossible for a guy to give a girl a blowjob. I explained what I was trying to do, but she couldn't grasp the concept at all as she had never received oral sex. After some explaining, she let me try it and instantly became a huge fan. My jaw still aches with fondness remembering that year. This blew up overnight. To answer some of the questions, she was a Malay girl who was studying abroad for her final year of uni. I met her as she was doing the same course as me. I got the impression that she was very reserved back in Malaysia, but wanted to go a bit wild when she came to Scotland. She wasn't a virgin when I met her, which is why I found it odd she wasn't aware of the concept of receiving oral sex. We had a lot of fun that year, but sadly, she moved back home and that was that. I had a holiday fling several years ago with a Turkish girl. Holy shit, do the locals not like it when you bang their women. You know,
oh, yikes.
Trying to nail every drunk Western tourist in the resort. Lots of shouted abuse when walking down the street and hanging out, and a couple of places off the beaten track I most def wasn't welcome. But totally worth it. She was a masseuse, and boy did she know how to use her hands.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, press the like button, and don't forget to watch our other videos.
That video was insane. That video was insane. That was insane.
People of Reddit, what questions do you have for the LGBT community?
Okay.
Again, how do you feel about your partners having bigger penises than you? Is it a turn on
I also
or
wonder.
is there envy? Not specifically about penises, but in a same-gender relationship, it can be easier to feel envy about how the other person looks or how accepting their family is, etc. Like my SO has better muscle definition than I do, despite them not really aiming for or desiring it. It can feel like a competition because you're both aiming for the same thing, whereas that's less common in straight relationships. What's on the gay agenda for today? Mostly playing Minecraft. Are there straight jokes? Straight people use jokes about being gay all the time, especially guys. The first time I heard a gay guy refer to straight people as breeders, I lost my shit. Never have I ever been more curious about how lesbians have sex until I watched some lesbian stand-up comics state that how lesbians have sex is nothing like in porn. They don't scissor, and it will forever remain a mystery. Don't get me wrong, I generally don't give a shit about how all the people have sex, their kinks, etc. It just is not a concern I ever thought about. But when she said that, I had a wait, what moment ever since. What are the creepy or offensive things that well-meaning, non-LGBT people say? As a bi girl, so which one of us, gesturing at a group of mainly straight friends, would be your type? What are you asking here? If I'm interested in effing or romancing one of my friends? If they should feel threatened? If it's a genuine, do you like a brunette, blonde, ginger? And if that's the case, why not frame it that way? It's like a effing predator when you ask like that. Yeah, I know you're into that whole LGBT stuff. What does that even mean? What's LGBT stuff? Rights, acknowledgement, discussions, protection? Yaoi fanfics?
Yaoi.
What do, or did, you need from your mom? Mom of a transgender. I do my best to support him and want to learn to do better. If he's okay with it, help him navigate school administrative stuff, read preferred name, bathrooms, etc. If you have doubts or fears or grief, that's okay.
Good luck with the bathroom thing.
Be prepared to issue ultimatums to unaccepting friends, neighbors, or relatives. How come it's common for gay men to befriend straight women, but it's uncommon for a butch lesbian to befriend straight men? I'm gay and my sister's a lesbian. My female friends have never requested to watch my husband and I have sex. Straight men are always asking my sister if they can watch my sister and her wife have sex. There's your answer. If you're trans, is it okay to ask what gender you identify as? As a trans individual, yes. I'd rather the question if you aren't sure. Guessing could get messy. Is it okay to not understand all the different qualifiers and instead just support equal treatment of people as a whole, and therefore support LGBTQ issues as a default? Because I don't think I'll ever understand what it's like to be pansexual or trans, but I do consider myself supportive of all walks of life. I don't understand half the flags, symbols, sexualities, and genders in the community.
Confused
I'm
and
by myself.
fluffy.
But hey, as long as they're not harmful, they have a right to a good life. I've been fortunate enough to have quite a few close friends who were gay in my lifetime, so I've got no how do things work kind of questions that haven't been answered. However, one of my favorites that I always ask when we're in the process of becoming friends: if you're around my age, mid-30s, and a gay guy, did you first realize you might be gay when watching the volleyball scene in Top Gun? And if not, why are you lying to me about when you first realized you were gay? I've never seen Top Gun, but I realized I was gay when I noticed that porn was much better when the dude was hot. One Google search for hot guys having sex later. Why are you gay? Woke up one day and dick sounded tasty. As a father of an LGBTQ daughter, how do I not rage at people who oppose the fact that my daughter exists? Lesbian. You can have a little rage as a treat. Seriously though, this comment made me smile. You seem like a wonderful dad. You don't have to hold in your anger at people who are pissed at your daughter for simply existing. Take the protective father stereotype and use it for good. I heard that trans people couldn't have biological children. I tried to look it up to see if it was true, but I found varying responses. I don't mean to offend or bring up anything painful, I was just wondering if the statement is accurate. It depends on to what degree someone has physically transitioned. If a person has had a full gender confirmation surgery, they no longer have the ability to carry or conceive a biological child.
That's kind of a dumb question.
So if they've frozen eggs or sperm beforehand and use a surrogate. If they've used hormones to transition, it's possible, but difficult. I believe it's more easy for a trans man to conceive than a trans woman. If they've socially transitioned or used blockers, the chances are they should biologically still be able to have a child. Though this will depend on the individual, since of course not every person, regardless of their transgender,
how are you gonna feel about this video?
Is the word dude a good non-binary pronoun? A lot of DMAB people are uncomfortable with it, especially
I have no idea what that
ladies.
means.
Folks is generally accepted, pal might work, and I've seen some people propose bringing back cats as an alternative to dudes, guys, i.e., what are you cats up to? Though personally,
I always say dude for male,
men,
female,
stereotypical gay
they,
accent. Well, yeah, it's not everyone.
He,
do you feel it comes
we,
natural to you, or do you prefer
zim,
to talk that way? It's not just a lisp you're talking
tis,
about, it's an entire way of speaking. Some gay men speak the way women speak, like
a song, sure,
way of speaking. I'd be curious to the answer to this question as well. Edit. Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye. It's not just a lisp. Is kissing the boys before bedtime gay?
That's definitely gay.
No homo. Bro, loving your boys is not to be ashamed of. How does gaydar work? How reliable is it? And specifically for men, do you still like boobs? I've only known a few gay men and they all liked boobs, so I'm wondering if boobs are just
that's
fun,
a good question.
no matter what. Gay man here, I find boobs fun to look at and play with, but my dick does nothing. There's definitely some weird attraction to them, but it doesn't go as far as turning me on. Shit's weird, yo. As for gaydar, it's usually picking up on voice inflection, some comment, or body language. Sometimes it's just catching them staring at your dick through your jeans. What is the difference between pansexual and bisexual?
I asked this yesterday.
It always sounds like a deluxe bisexual.
Deluxe bisexual.
To feel special. You do what you want as long
as
you're not
pan was like the season
I'm just
pass.
trying to understand it. In practice, there is virtually no difference. Pansexual has been adopted because bisexual presumes only two genders of attraction, and pansexual leaves the door open for other possibilities.
Other possibilities.
There may be people who agree with pansexual being an appropriate term for people who are attracted to all genders, who also say that they are bisexual because their sexuality is limited to two specific genders, and not necessarily male and female either. I know plenty of non-binary people who use bi without worrying about an implication about the number of genders. What did you wish you knew as a teenager that you know now? There are so many more gay people in this world than statistics show, because many people are either still in the closet or don't come out as gay on any form or census. What if I fall in love with a gay man? Depends. If you're a girl, sorry, you're out of luck. Give it time and you'll move on. If you're a guy, go for it. To all the lesbian couples, how do you feel about your relationships being over-sexualized? It's irritating. On one hand, people sexualize the shit out of lesbian couples, but on the other, they put down same-sex couples as an abomination, sin, disgusting, etc. And the overlap of the two is surprising. Me and my GF just want to exist the same as everyone else. What constitutes losing your virginity for lesbians? I was having a discussion with my daughter last night and we couldn't decide a good answer for her. For background, she's a 16-year-old who came out to us last summer as asexual or panromantic. She wants to be able to define that line for herself. I want to help her, but this is way out of my wheelhouse. Virginity is a social construct. There's no true definition of virginity. Some people count it as a dick getting put into you, others count it as your first kiss or first sexual thought. It all depends on your own definition of virginity and what values are with it. Honest question for the trans community. I learned about some queer studies, theories, a major part of which was the queering of gender. Basically, that gender is a construct we created and may not even need at all. I know a few people who decided to identify as non-binary because they're tired of having only two options. Does this ideology conflict with trans ideology? For trans people, when you were thinking about transitioning,
oh my god, my brain.
Maybe I don't need to choose a gender at all, come up. Why or why not? Well, I'm non-binary, and I personally think that gender as we know it is a useless social construct.
That question was a whole book.
Gender identity and the existence of gender is very important to some people, so I'll always respect that. It all comes down to who you ask, really. I wouldn't want to abolish gender because it matters a lot to some people, but it just doesn't work for me personally. I'm more for the bastardization of gender. F it. Be male, be female, be both, be neither. Have a gender identity that can only be conveyed through slam poetry or a sick drawing of a dragon or a swarm of bees, who cares? I started working from home full-time in February, and my GF and I didn't exactly have the most social lives before that, so the number of people I know who
I'm learning so much in this video.
What's the best way for me to be an ally without pandering or trying to tokenize the LGBTQ plus community? Treat us like normal people. Really, be curious, ask questions, respect pronouns,
People
gender identity, and
don't
do
like
your
the
research.
questions
Show
though.
pride. Support your LGBTQ friends. Put your pronouns in your social media bio. Ask your LGBT friends what
Me, I just don't even ask.
Gay dudes, when participating in some
Just
bum fun,
avoid
does the catcher also get a boner
the
on top?
pronouns
Obviously, he's getting lots of
whatsoever.
pleasure
Wait,
from being
what?
effed, but having a hard
Is
time imagining a guy
participation
receiving dick
bum
while
fun?
also
Does the
sporting a full
catcher-
dick. It doesn't seem like it would work.
The
Doesn't your
catcher?
backdoor see shut when you get a rock on? It really depends. I've effed a lot of guys who were rock hard the whole time without touching themselves. I've effed guys who were soft but moaning like they were in heat the whole time. Sometimes when I get effed, I want to jerk off because the prostate stimulation feels like it's supercharging my dick. Other times I ignore my cock and just focus on my hole. Coming hands-free is pretty difficult. It takes a lot of mental stimulation. I've only been in that headspace once, but it was pretty unbelievable. I'm not straight, but I've always wanted to ask a trans person what they mean when they say they feel like a man or a woman. I guess
this video is
it's probably not
insane.
entirely tangible, but I've always found it intriguing. Imagine waking up every day of your life feeling like something's wrong. You're perfectly healthy, your life is great, but there's something wrong, you just don't know what. The feeling gets worse when you look at yourself in the mirror or see your body. It gets even worse when puberty starts and you watch your body change and you hate it, but you don't know why. There's just something wrong. The feeling sometimes gets better when you look at other people of the opposite sex. For me, girls. Sometimes it gets worse and you get frustrated for no reason. Maybe you have a crush on one of those girls. Maybe you just want some attention from them. But then, you had a crush on one of them. There
Oh my
should be
god,
some
dude.
happiness.
And what is all
There
this
just isn't.
speculation? My
No.
brain.
Your life is
My
great, but you're
brain.
miserable and you
My
can't figure
brain.
out why. Then
My
one day,
brain.
a random thought occurs. I wish I were a girl. Then you understand what was wrong with you all your life.
And that was...
Men, what are some questions you've always wanted to ask women
Not this
but were
again.
too
Not this again.
embarrassed?
Not this
How
again.
and how often do girls
Not this
masturbate?
again.
Yes,
Not
we
this
girls do give pleasure to our...
Not this again.